everyone, welcome back to the Self-Sufficient Homestead. For those of you that haven't met me, I'm Tanya Milan. Today I thought you could join me in my kitchen while I make some sauerkraut. So we'll be giving you some nice facts about it as we go through the process. And I have so much cabbage in the garden and I have to start preserving it. Now this was freshly picked about 10 minutes ago. So it is loaded with all its nutrients still. Now I want to preserve it as best as possible. And if you've got a lot in your garden, then you need to do things with it. Otherwise you're just going to do this. It's going to crack open and you're going to have to use it for animal feed or compost. Sauerkraut it is. So first of all, I've got my cabbage here. And I normally just take my cabbage and I cut it in quarters. I save a leaf, so let me just take a part of this leaf here and just put it to the side. I don't like the cores much, so I cut them out. It just makes it easier for me. So depending on how you like it, I like it quite fine. You can just slice it up. Now, there is some holes in my cabbage. So there was some little animal that was eating. I don't mind that. As long as the animal is not there, I don't mind the holes. I would rather eat wholly vegetables compared to pesticide-filled vegetables. So these are all organic, nothing went into them. Just making some space here. Inside your crucifers. Your crucifers are your vegetables like your broccoli and your cauliflower and your cabbage. We've got chemical compounds, and last time we spoke about the sulforaphane, but I want to speak about it more. There is a certain amount of sulforaphane now in the cabbage, but the moment that we start bruising it, the chemical compound plus an enzyme starts mixing and it makes more sulforaphane. So by doing this, and we're going to be squashing it just now as well, we are creating more sulforaphane in our cabbage. Now, why do we want more sulforaphane? Sulforaphane is the actual chemical compound that helps fight cancer. So anybody wanting to just live healthier and prevent disease, this is a really great method. And yes, you will get some sulforaphane in your raw cabbage, but it will not be anywhere as much as it would be once you've chopped it up and bruised it. Then also, if you start fermenting it, the bacteria, the lactobacteria that we get in our lactofermentation, also helps with the production of more sulforaphane. So by the time that you're going to eat your sauerkraut in about 2 to 3 weeks' time, you're going to have about 10 times the sulforaphane then than you have now. So very, very good reason why we would want to ferment it then. I was just thinking when I said 2 to 3 weeks, when you make sauerkraut and you haven't made it before, around about probably 10 days, it starts smelling like rotten egg. It really stinks. And then you think, what's wrong with my ferment? Is it off? Is it bad? You don't have to worry about that. That is just a high sulfur count inside the cabbage that is released, and then you smell that. But if you just leave your ferment a little bit longer, that evaporates, it goes away. I've had so many people say to me, I can't eat this. It's horrible. You just haven't fermented it long enough. Alright, so we've got our cabbage here. Our next step is to weigh it. I've got my scale here. And clever me didn't weigh the bowl first, so let's just do that. So we're just going to tear that and put our cabbage in. 800 grams of cabbage. Now, when making sauerkraut, you want to have a 2% brine solution. So you can take 800 grams times 0.02, and that will give you how much salt to put in here. But I make it easy for myself. I know for 1 kilogram, it's a tablespoon of salt. So I just will take a little bit less than a tablespoon. And it's never harmful to have a bit more. Just don't have less than you should have. I would say that is the sufficient amount. If you're pedantic, you can weigh it. So next thing is we want to crush this. We want to actually massage the cabbage so it can release all the cabbage juice, and that is what we will use as the brine. Now I need to do this for 3 to 5 minutes, depending how long it takes for this cabbage to give in. In my garden I had some peas, and last time we preserved some peas, I put them in the freezer. I've actually eaten them all now because the peas in my garden are finished. For some reason peas don't last that long. I mean, they just give their yield and then they decide that's done, we're done. And then you have to replant. I have replanted and I'm excitedly waiting for the rest to come out now. And there's a lot of other things we planted as well. Unfortunately, our beans, I planted about 30 variety of beans. The locusts ate them. So we probably got about 10 plants, and it's one variety that they don't like. Now you ask me probably, why would I have 30 varieties of beans? Won't they cross-pollinate? Well, beans can cross-pollinate, but they need a bumblebee to do it. The bumblebee forces open the flower, and then it cross-pollinates if it's been at another variety of bean. But if you don't have bumblebees, the bean pollinates itself. By the time it's open, it's all done and nothing further happens. So it cannot be cross-pollinated from there. We don't have bumblebees here, so I'm able to I'll plant as many varieties as I want and they won't cross-pollinate. Problem is, if there's locusts, I won't have any because I just eat them all. So we replanted some beans in another garden away from where the locusts are, and I'm hoping that would help. So every morning we go out and we get rid of all the locusts. That's the only way I can think of controlling that. If you have a look here, my sauerkraut is starting to form its brine. The juices are coming out. I still need a lot though, because you want enough water for when you put your cabbage in your fermentation crock or your bottle, if you don't have a crock, to cover all your cabbage. One very important thing with fermenting vegetables, it must always be under the brine. If it's above the brine, it's going to mold. So I'm just going to massage some more here. And of course you can add now other things like apple. I prefer just having my sauerkraut just basic, just this. I've let it stand and look at all that liquid. So it's really producing now. I do this, look at all that. So I'm testing out a new fermentation crock that a company sent me. If I think it's any good, I'm going to tell you more about it, then you can order this too. What I do like about this fermentation crock is this really deep groove here for your water, for your oil, to create your airlock. In sauerkraut we do not want any oxygen, so that's why the fermentation crock has that groove. If you are doing it in a jar, you need to put up an airlock. If you don't have an airlock, you can put on a normal lid and just burp it every day. But if you burp it every day, you do expose it to everything that's in the air, and there can be molds in the air that go into your ferment. So it's always safer to have a good fermentation crock or an airlock. So I'm just going to use a canning funnel so I don't mess on the outside of my jar. And I'm going to be putting my cabbage in there bit by bit. I'm going to use this from my pestle and mortar and just stamp it down a bit by bit. You want to compress it as much as possible. Get out the air and squeeze out any extra moisture that you can from your cabbage. Now I want all this liquid in here as well. Okay, if you have a look in there, you see that the brine is just not enough to cover that cabbage. So in cases like these, when you do not have enough brine, you can make a bit extra. Once again, with your 2% salt solution. I'm just going to take a bowl, and I don't need so much now. I don't need a whole liter of water. So I'm going to make like maximum a cup. So in a cup, I will put around about 1 teaspoon for a cup, and that works out to 2%. But you can do it with a scale and be very, very, very precise. Make sure you dissolve all the salt in your brine, because if you only use half of the cup, you don't want to use water that's not 2%. If you didn't dilute it properly, then they'll probably be about 0.5% in there, and that's not, you don't want that. So make sure everything is stirred through and dissolved before you use it. Okay. Well, I've actually used all of it. Okay. Just going to press it down one more time here. Now, an important thing to remember is you don't want any of your cabbage floating at the top. And this is why we've kept this as well. We've got a weight as well, but I'm going to show you. What's the grape leaf all about? Grape leaves contain tannins, and tannins help your ferment to stay crunchy. So because I like my sauerkraut crunchy and not soggy, I'm going to add 1 grape leaf to the top here and just compress it into my ferment. It will release its tannins and it will keep your ferment nice and crunchy. This is the weights that I'm going to put in, but to help with the floaters so they all stay at the bottom, I will use a cabbage leaf as well, which will just keep everything down. Even though the leaf is a bit holy, it's going to help keep those floaters at the bottom. Now my hands are clean. That's an important point to take note of. When you work with your ferment, make sure your hands are nice and clean, because you are going to be putting your hand inside here. Is put my little weights on top of my cabbage leaf, and this will just help keep everything down. Put some water in this groove, which will create an airlock if I place the lid on. The ferment will be releasing gases, so this lid that I will put on here will now seal this. The water in here will let the gases out, but nothing can come in. One thing that I can already tell you that I like about this crock is the fact that there's not a lot of space for things to fall in. You can put a little cloth over it to protect it as well, because dust and things can go in there. Obviously it's pushed out, the gases push things out, but you don't want dirt getting trapped there. So you can just take your cloth and put it over your fermentation crock and put it in a cool, dry place for 2 to 3 weeks. And that's it. That's how I make my sauerkraut. So thank you for spending time in my kitchen, and I will see you next time again.